What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Alarm Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Howard Bender, at RotoBuzzGuy on Twitter. And you know what? And listen, it's just me today. Coming up next hour, you got Brit Blitz. And let's shout out to our boy, Andrew Cooper, member of the Fantasy Alarm family. Normally, he's over here right now, but Coop's cradling his little brand new baby, right? So at Coop A Fiasco on the old Twitter machine. For y'all who want to send your warm congratulations to Andrew Cooper, who has officially joined the hashtag Girl Dad Ranks. But you're here to talk some football. You're here to talk fantasy football. I'm here to help you out. And we got a great show going on here for you today. I'm going to obviously cover a lot of the news stories that are going on. Well, the popular news stories. I'm going to leave some of the popcorn headlines to I don't know, another time here. We're going to focus on what you guys need to know because guess what? Today's July 31st. August, the calendar flips, draft season well underway. Fantasy Football Expo's coming up in like 2 weeks. And before you know it, the season's going to be here. So you need that draft knowledge. You can obviously get it going to fantasyalarm.com and you can get yourself a copy of our draft guide at fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. I'll be honest with you guys. I think that if you're just getting yourself the cheat sheet or you're just getting yourself the draft guide, you're probably doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. All right. Get the all pro package. I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. You play a little MLB DFS for the next month, win some money, and you'll pay for that package in no time. Because what we got coming up for football season this year is going to be absolutely amazing. I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing. We're all going to make a ton of money playing DFS. We're all going to be sitting in the winner's circle at the end of the year, wearing our championship rings, hoisting our trophies, making that extra cash, whatever it is. Come join us here. Join the family. fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. You want to get into it. All right. Do we want to get to the news? We do want to get to the news. And I've got to start it off here. Obviously, the Jonathan Taylor saga is the one that's really just making everybody absolutely bonkers, absolutely insane. I've gotten so many panic messages from Jonathan Taylor owners in keeper leagues, dynasty leagues, you name it. People are just going absolutely nuts. They don't know what to do. Listen, first and foremost, I'm not ready to drop Jonathan Taylor down my boards. You've got my rankings over at fantasyalarm.com. I don't love the situation as it is right now, but it's something that we have to deal with. And if you downgrade Jonathan Taylor too much, what happens if the Colts do trade him? What happens if he and Jim Irsay come to some sort of a happy medium and Taylor's right back in the thick of things? Like, this is not, I mean, he's a very talented back. This is not somebody who you want to let slip to the third round. I mean, we're going to be joined in a little while here by my man Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter. And he's got all the insights, all the scoops into what you're seeing with the ADP, not just at the high stakes level, but, you know, even just the pros with Joe's drafts that we're all doing right now. I've done one. We'll talk about my draft and we'll talk about, you know, strategies employed there. But the bottom line is that I'm just not ready to let Jonathan Taylor drop too far and lose what is absolutely fantastic. Now, you know, we'll talk to Darren about certain things. Like, you could look at what the pros versus Joe's ADP was last week, right? Versus what it's going to look like this week. They just started the second week of drafts last night. I know tonight Britt Flynn and Kevin Tompkins are going to be doing their own pros versus Joe's draft. If you let that happen, if you let the guy fall like that, and you're giving people the opportunity to scoop up Jonathan Taylor as a third rounder, kind of like everybody was doing with Saquon Barkley. Oh, I mean, that's really, like, I have to like give that sigh. I have to give that just that whole feeling of this is not something that you want to do in this day and era where we're sitting here talking about shared running back situations and stuff like that. You don't want to let a potential bell cow slip because you aren't privy to the situation. I mean, that's the important thing to know about this whole Jonathan Taylor situation. What you guys are catching is not the full story, right? Jonathan Taylor tweeting out yesterday that, he didn't have any back issues. He doesn't know what they're talking about back issues. The bottom line is this. The players have no leverage here. They could hold out, sure. But there are other players who will happily sign for less money and get that opportunity to shine bright themselves. The big problem here, and I explained this on the morning show this morning. So if you haven't checked out A Better Morning, me, Britt Flynn, Corey Parson, we all kind of had this conversation. You could say my heart goes out to these running backs. They're not getting paid enough. They're a huge part of the offense, yada, 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 yada. That's true. It's 100% true. But why do the owners are the owners billionaires because they give out charity? Are the owners billionaires because they, are gonna, oh, okay, well, my running back, he wants a little bit of extra money. It doesn't work like that. Like, try it out in the real world somewhere, right? Try to renegotiate a contract that you've got in the real world and tell your boss that, well, you know what? I've been doing a really great job, so I feel like I should renegotiate my contract. Your boss is going to be like, F off, dude. Because there are probably 50 people lining up behind you who are ready to take your job. They have no incentive to do it. If you guys want to blame somebody, stop blaming the owners. Blame what's his face, DeMaurice Smith, the guy who's now in charge, who heads up the NFL Players Association. He's the one that negotiated this contract. Like, listen, first and foremost, I have no idea. I have no idea how ownership had the opportunity to opt out of the CBA in 2011, the CBA that was signed in 1993. But that's what happened. Ownership opted out. All right. And then we had the whole lockout threat, and this was going on and that was going on. And here's the issue. And this is a standard thing with unions and ownership. Any business. Go back, read about the United Auto Workers in Detroit back in the days of the old AFL-CIO and the negotiations over there. All right. You need a Norma Ray to stand up and sacrifice everything about her in order to make change. And you're not going to get that here. It's not going to happen. So ownership turns around in 2011 and says, okay, let's renegotiate this deal. All right. Players agree. The Players Association agreed to a rookie salary cap. Okay. They agreed to $50 million being taken out of all the union money, the Players Association money, and put towards medical research because everyone was freaking out about concussions, rightfully so. But this is what the players asked for, and this is what they were given. They were also given $1 billion put in towards their retirement fund, okay, to help that. That is what labor asked for. Ownership, after a little while, a little negotiation back and forth, they said, okay, fine. But now here we are, how many years later, right? 12 years later, and here comes the players who are like, oh, damn. You know what? We didn't think about things like what the economy was going to be like in 15 years. That's the big problem between ownership and unions. The unions represent the rank and file. And the rank and file, they want to feed their families right now. They want to buy their mom a new house right now. All right. They want to take care of their families. They want to set everybody up so that they never have to work another day in their life. And all they're thinking about is what money they're getting now. They're thinking about the economy in 3 to 5 years. Ownership is playing chess while the rank and file are playing checkers, because ownership's looking at deals way down the road. They're looking at what the economy projections are for the next 15 to 20 years, and they're making sure that they're tucked in nice and snug and safe. Okay. And that's what's happening right now, is that all of a sudden the players are waking up and they're like, what? Oh, is this what's going on right now? That all of a sudden now the running backs are not making any money and they're getting abused. And this is what was agreed upon. The CBA doesn't have to be renegotiated until 2030. So good freaking luck. My feeling is that with the players having no leverage, I don't know what you're going to do. And that was what Irsay did. Irsay was like, listen, Jonathan Taylor, you want to tweet out in solidarity with your fellow running backs? You want to tell everybody that you want to trade if you're not going to get a renegotiated contract? Well, that's Jim Irsay saying, F you, Jonathan Taylor. A, I don't have to do that. B, I don't think I need to do that right now. And C, go ahead. You want to try and hold out? I'll put you on the NFI list. Tell everybody you got a back issue, and there you go. Like, all he has to do is prove at one point Jonathan Taylor was like, geez, my back hurts. My back's bothering me. That's all he needs to do, is prove that he heard that once. And that's a pre-existing condition. And that puts Jonathan Taylor on the NFI list. And then where's Jonathan Taylor? Oh, he's out of all of his money for this year. He has to play on his contract next year. And then he's going to end up with the franchise tag in 2 years, because Irsay doesn't have to do any of this. So sitting there and holding out and all the other nonsense that we're seeing right now, it's just not going to happen. I'll tell you what, if you're in a draft where somebody is if everybody's fading Jonathan Taylor because they're afraid, buy that dip. Buy it. Do it. Do yourself a huge, huge favor, because that's what I'm doing. And I know that that's what's going on here right now. So, instead of sitting there being like, oh, poor running backs, they work so hard. Yeah, you know what? Everybody works hard in the NFL. It's the NFL. I'm sorry that running backs aren't getting paid. Stop looking at me. Stop looking at ownership. Stop crying to the media. What you need to do is you need to privately and nicely work something out with ownership, right? This whole public, I'm going to try this in the public court. No, it doesn't work, and it puts off ownership. And when you don't have squat and leverage, it ain't going to happen. So yes, Jonathan Taylor for me. I'm very happy to let everybody pass on him. I will happily take care of that. Let's keep going with a little bit of running back news here as it is right now. Seahawks running backs all banged up. Here we go. Again, I don't know why ownership doesn't want to renegotiate for running backs here. Walker's dealing with a groin injury. Zach Charbonnet's got a shoulder issue that has him out indefinitely. Is that the rest of camp? Is that going to affect him into the season? I don't know. I'm not really that sure. We're going to have to wait and see. I feel like, and this might sound a little crazy, but I feel like if you're fading running backs because you're afraid of an injury here at the tail end of July, or you're afraid that they're going to hold out, i.e. Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor, right? You as a fantasy owner, you're going to make that mistake. You're going to overinvest in wide receivers. You're going to overinvest. You're going to keep pushing that ADP up on quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden, it's the person like me who's like, really? You're going to give me Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor at the 3-4 turn in this draft? Yeah, I will happily take that. And I will laugh my ass off, because show up in, week 8, week 9, week 10, my team's absolutely cruising, and you're sitting there being like, geez, I wonder if Deuce Vaughn is going to be available for any kind of work. So I have an issue with that. For the same token, don't fade Dalvin Cook. Dude's going to sign somewhere. Dude wants to pay. What's he doing right now? Now he's putting the leverage between the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. Both want him. Miami's even offered up a deal already. Dalvin Cook's like, okay, well, listen, I'm going to go meet with the Jets. I'm going to see what happens. I really like what I'm hearing about the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers takes a pay cut to fit me in. Dalvin Cook's going to get paid. So I don't care whether he's with the Jets or whether he's with Miami. I'd prefer Miami personally, because I think he stands the chance of holding on to everything for the duration of the season and being that lead bell cow. With the Jets, I think he's devalued a little bit, because we will get Breece Hall back. And yes, it'll be a Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook 1-2 punch. Or maybe if Breece Hall is totally fine and the Jets feel comfortable, maybe they trade Dalvin Cook. But for Dalvin Cook, if he lands in Miami, I am in. Either way, people sit there leaving, Dalvin Cook. Keep it going, man. Keep that running back room going. I am all in on that. I'll tell you what, let's instead of taking my word for where you shouldn't let Dalvin Cook fall, let's bring in my guest from the FFPC. His name is Darren Armani. You know him at Fantasy Mojo on the old Twitter machine. And that handsome son of a bitch is sitting right in here with me next to me. Darren, welcome back. Welcome to this show, man. Really appreciate you joining us. how's your pre-draft season going?
Pre-draft season, it's been going since January. I mean, we draft before the Super Bowl starts. We go 365 days a year. It never stops. So, but yeah, it's quite a different. Like now, like everybody's jumping in. So we call it tourist season, right? The drafts they get a little softer. You get a little more variance draft to draft. It's good.
Well, what do you say? You know what I mean? Because it's kind of funny. We sit there and we talk about the fact that football is 365, 7 days a week, 365 a year. Everybody's still going. If you've been drafting since January, basically since the season has ended, and you've been working that, like, what are some of those, like, what, I guess you could look at it and say, well, these guys are going to be going into contract issues. These guys are, this team could be looking for that for the draft. Like, how often do you see people who are drafting that early? How successful do you find that they are further down the road?
Well, they're usually the hardcore guys, right? So they're a little more advanced, in terms of draftability. So what happens is there's 3 seasons to drafting. You've got pre-NFL draft, which is just complete diehards, right? They're drafting before the NFL draft, and they're getting rookies, before, like, you don't know that the landing spots. It's before free agency, but they're getting their reps in, and then you have the period between the NFL draft and training camp, which is okay. Now we know what teams the rookies are on. So there's some free agency movement. That's the second period. And now we're into the final phase, which is we know where all the landing spots are, and the training camp hits. And then now's when shit hits the fan, because there's news every day. There's real news going on every day. There's not like, coach speak and stuff that there's real actionable information to react to. But the guys who draft all year long, they're in tune with the draft. So, if they hop into a draft, they can immediately spot like a soft spot in ADP or something. So it helps. It's a lot of work, but it helps to like kind of be tied in all season long like that.
All right. Well, let's talk about what's going on right now, because obviously, I mean, listen, the big story on everybody's mind, I opened the show with it here, is talking about the whole Jonathan Taylor situation. I guess, I mean, it's an epidemic spreading rampantly right now because, stemming off of Barkley threatening to hold out. Josh Jacobs still hasn't signed his franchise tag. Jonathan Taylor wants to renegotiate, and Jim Irsay basically said, F you, and I'll put you on the NFI list, and sit you out and franchise you in 2 years, idiot. Like, I mean, this is what we're dealing with right now. So, I mean, the ADP, like, we just started up pros with Joe's. You've tracked ADP since January and kind of floating in here. So I guess let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that there is a major dip, I think, in running back ADP. Are you seeing it overall?
It does seem that most of the volatility right now is around the running backs. So Jacobs, Barkley, Taylor, even Mixon for a while. I mean, that's the area where drafters are most sensitive is around the running backs, it seems like. So when draft season started for Taylor, I mean, he was going in the first round. I mean, there were some drafts where he went as early as 105, 106. Right now, with the kind of the drama, and it's hard to read what's going on, because there's talk about him being injured, and then he came out with a tweet and says, "Well, I haven't told anybody about an injury," and then the owner's got his nonsense going on. So for me, he's not a fade. But at this point, I want a discount on him. So I probably will wait till late second or third to take him. But again, since we've been drafting since January, I've got shares at him at basically every price point. Like, I had some first round back in February, and I had some early second round, now third round. But I would take the discount because it can switch like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people get scared so easy. They get real jittery. But then, like Barclays, it just gets solved overnight, and then everything's good, right? So you don't want to be totally out, but you do want to take discounts when they're presented to you.
You definitely want to take that discount. Absolutely. I think it was Eric Balkman and I were having that chat because I did a pros with Joe's draft, and I took Saquon Barkley at the tail end of the first round. I was picking 10th, and he's already agreed. He signed. He was good to go. He was in camp. The dude was in camp. I'm on the West Coast. The dude, it was like 4 a.m. my time where we got news that Saquon Barkley was signing, and he was already, at the practice facility at 7 a.m. ready to go. So I was like, yeah, all right, well, listen, man, I love that kind of an attitude. So Barkley, obviously the discount is gone. Like I think last week,
Yeah.
Right. Where did he go? Where did he go last week?
He went, well, if we're just talking pros versus Joes, he was going like early second, like you said, you took him at the beginning of the second round, right?
I took him 10th overall actually in mine.
Oh.
And
okay.
Balky was like
that was the day after he signed. The night before he went at 306. So that was like doom and gloom. And then, like I said, all of a sudden everything just gets resolved and you're good to go. So the same thing could happen with Jonathan Taylor. Like any day, like people could just sort of, get on the same page and then it's back to business and you probably see him back in the second round. But yeah, so there's violent shifts in draft movement day to day like that.
What are you seeing with Josh Jacobs right now? Because I mean, I can imagine if Barkley was falling to like, the early third round, mid third round, I got to figure that Jacobs is probably falling at least in that range, possibly even lower, considering he hasn't signed yet.
Yeah. So right now, in the FFPC Fantasy Pros drafts in the past 3 days, his ADP is about 306. But it's like every draft is going to be different. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get like this snowball effect. If you're in a draft room and then if a player gets faded in that particular draft, there's like a snowball. It's a very psychological thing. Like, because you're literally looking at the draft queue and you see like that top guy in the queue, like he's not getting picked. And then you start saying, did he get hit by a bus? I mean, like what's going on? So yesterday he went as late as the 410 in one of those drafts. But in general, it's 306. That seems like a more of a long-term situation where it's going to stay depressed for a while.
All right. At Fantasy Mojo, on Twitter, you are in the draft room right now. You're picking. I'm going to put you 10th overall, in your draft. Are you grabbing running backs there, or are you thinking, you know what? I'm going to see if I can wait a little bit more because everybody's freaking out about JT and Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting you say that because I got my main event draft slot and it was a 10 spot. So when I'm in Vegas in September, I'll be drafting out of the 10 spot. And that's the sweet spot right there, that last quarter of the draft board there. That's a sweet spot for wide receivers. It's going to be, and again, you don't know for sure, but if today I'm probably going receiver there because you've got 3 running backs like McCaffrey, Eckler, and Bijan are probably going to be gone right at the 10th spot. And then you've got the next ones up are Chubb and Barkley. So, but the meat there is you got Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, A.G. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs. So if you don't, I would take advantage of that right there because by the time it comes back around to you for 310, you've got a totally different level of wide receiver. You're looking at DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen. I mean, you take the elite options when you can with those first couple of picks because you don't want to risk too much, right? You want to kind of play it safe with those. You don't want to be a hero in the first round, like they say. Like, you could lose your draft in the first round. So I'm probably hitting receivers there.
You're hitting receivers there. A lot of people, I mean, listen, I get it. That's what we're seeing a ton of right now. And it's going to be really interesting to see the way this season kind of plays out. Before we start talking some more wide receivers here, I got to plug fantasymojo.com. Dude, the work that you put in, the work that you do for ADP charting, risers, fallers, the different styles of leagues. I mean, if people are not subscribing to this site, then it's got to be a huge mistake, because first and foremost, you are a friggin' champion when it comes to numbers and spreadsheets and all of that stuff. But tell everybody how to use it. I'm sure that there are some people who are going to go to your site. They're going to kind of start surfing through and look, and they're going to be, overwhelmed or intimidated or anything like that. Dude, your site has to be one of the most helpful tools, I think, for people drafting.
Yeah. So if you're playing FFPC, and I used to be modest about it, but at this point, I put it out there. It's like, if you don't subscribe to our site and you draft on the FFPC platform, you really are at a disadvantage to the other players that are, because that's all we do is FFPC, right? So that is our specialty. We're a niche, and we're the one-stop shop for everything FFPC. So we have ADP, yeah, but we have ADP for the 15 different varieties of contests that they have. All the different best ball, super flex best ball, regular best ball, main event, the Fantasy Pros 350 drafts, slim leagues. There's like 6 different kinds of dynasty leagues. So, and we got it all covered. But I tell you, the most popular feature that people like to do is they'll go in the morning, and every day we update draft boards. So you go in the morning, and I can tell you this is a ritual for people, because I just kind of see the activity. They come in the morning and they look at the drafts that happened last night, and they look at the boards. Like, ADP is just one data point, right? You don't have the context of what fed into that. You have to see the draft board to kind of get a feel for, okay, Stephon Diggs is 110, but that's in the context of, okay, the running backs are kind of going that way, and then the tight ends come later, and it gives you the whole picture. So we'll have them for all the live drafts. And actually, we have every draft board for any FFPC draft held online. So I can go back in 2 clicks and find all my January draft boards, right? So that's the ADP and the draft board is the primary thing. The special thing that we have is I call them the stack finders. And if for the real diehard tournament player, they take it to the next level, and they want to know, okay, how many teams have been drafted right now, which might have Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, and Mark Andrews, because then you get that, the question is, how unique am I in a field of 10,000 teams? Because when you get to that money round and you're in that championship sprint, what differentiates all those guys are going to have the same winning players from the year, right? So what is it that differentiates you from the other 300 teams that have Jonathan Taylor or Justin Jefferson or whatnot? So I can tell you, there's guys who go into, they draft every night, and they're aware of it's basically the population of certain combinations of players. So we have that tool out there, and you can find the combinations for any tournament that they have: the best ball, the super flex best ball, the main event, the Fantasy Pros, and there's one other one too. So, but those are the 3 main tools. But that's just draft season. So the last thing I'll plug is, in season we have waiver wire run data, right? So every week after the waiver wires execute, we have easy to read reports of who were the top players added, who were the most players dropped, what were the bid amounts. And what's really helpful is we have the historical data on that too. So if you're a new player and you don't know, well, how much should I be bidding on a player? Well, how much you bid on week 1 might be different than week 10. You can go back to last year in any format and look at the waiver wire runs, right? And say, oh, well, the top running back, the first couple of weeks, if there's a hot RB, people will be throwing $700, $800 or $1,000. And you can see that, right? You kind of see the trend. So, but that's the other big thing that we have. But anybody who wants to know what we offer, you just go to our site, fantasymojo.com. There's a virtual tour on the front page. You just click on that, and it takes you through everything. So we don't really solicit people to describe, but if you know, you know. And if you aren't subscribing, you're kind of behind the 8 ball if you're playing FFPC.
I'm going to solicit for you. I'm telling you guys, I'm going to solicit
I'm
for
modest, like I said.
You're being very modest. I'm telling you, people. I've been, in and out of that site, and there is, it's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the work that you put in. Is that a Jets hat you're wearing, by the way?
No, it's Eagles.
Oh, okay, all right. I was having trouble because it's kind of tilted up there. All right, listen, yeah, birds fly, eagles fly.
That's it. Kelly Green jerseys today, baby. Loving it.
You're loving it. You're loving it. How many Taylor Swift shows have you been to with an Eagles jersey on?
I got to admit, I've been to zero. Done zero Taylor Swift live experiences. I know you're a big concert guy. The last I saw Bruce Springsteen in State College this past summer.
Ooh.
I think that was the last one that I did. Yeah.
Wow, State College, PA. I think
that's it.
I saw Fish there probably in like the late 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. No, I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw this whole thing about, the Kelsey's podcast.
Yes.
And basically, Travis Kelce was at the Taylor Swift show and he asked to come backstage to meet her. And she was like, which Kelsey? And when they said Travis and not Jason, she was like, is he going to say, does the bracelet that he gives me, does it say Go Birds? And her assistant was like, no. And she was like, I'm not going to see him then.
Yeah, she's an Eagles fan, so she's from the area. Yep. Absolutely.
All right, so here we go. So we got the plug here for fantasymojo.com. Don't be an idiot, people. Trust me, you want to dive in on this, especially if you're doing FFPC drafts all over the place. But let's talk about a couple of other things. Like everybody bitches and moans to me all the time. Everybody talks about, on SiriusXM, everybody's only talking about the top 5 players at each position, blah, blah. So I want to dig a little deeper here. And this is where you're probably best off because the ADP of what we're seeing in some very, very weird situations. And let's go to wide receivers, because if everybody's sitting there up top and they're grabbing those elite wide receivers, and then you're like on that DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen kind of run, we obviously need to pick up some of the really mid to late round people there, and which players to target, which ones not to target.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Are you there?
I'm good.
I was just prattling on, man. I was rambling. So you're good.
That was a burp.
The question that I have, so let's talk some wide receiver rooms that might not be so set, where you're like, I don't even know who the number 1 guy is here. We'll start in Kansas City. I mean, I could talk about Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Rashee Rice, but I mean, I know who I like there. I'm curious as to who you like in this room. It's really messed up.
My answer to that is if you're drafting anybody besides Travis Kelce, you're probably guessing, right? Mm-hmm. I can tell you that on the FFPC platform, Travis Kelce is one of my top 4 highest owned players. I've been drafting him every opportunity that I've had since January. We did the hard way draft, which was streamed, and that's like 12 of the premier high stakes players. And I took Kelce Mahomes stack right off the bat. You can't the advance rates and the win rates, if you own Travis Kelce, are ridiculous. I think it was 70% of the teams, 65% of the teams that took a Kelce Mahomes stack in last year's Fantasy Pros Championship advanced to the championship round. 70%. So you could be a complete doofus and mess up the back half of your draft, and he still had a good shot because he's that good. So, but as far as the receivers go, you're really kind of guessing. I can tell you that of those other options, and I call them the penny stocks, right? People are trying to find that which diamond in the rough am I going after. I can tell you that Sky Moore is probably the most popular option there. When I look at, so you've got Sky Moore, you've got Justin Ross, and who else we got? So Tony's the one that dropped. Okay, so he was going to mid 7th round in June. Now he's down to to the mid to late 10th, and I think he's kind of settled there. But if I'm going one of those, I probably would take Sky Moore because there's some questions of, is Ross going to make the roster? Is MVS that guy? It's hard to rely on him. Are you starting him any week with confidence? Like, you don't know what he's going to do. He's great in best ball. So the format matters too. Right. So I might want MVS at a lesser cost in the best ball format. But if I'm in a redraft format, maybe I'll pay a little bit more, and Sky Moore is the guy that I want because maybe he has a profile of a week-to-week redraft, producer for me.
Okay. As you're sifting through the numbers and you're looking at who's the most popular out of the New York Giants, and I know Eagles fan, I don't mean to be,
It's Saquon. That's right.
What's that?
You say you got Saquon. He's a Penn State guy, so I have a soft spot for something.
Okay, all right. But that wide receiver room, I mean, let's talk about that. Hodgins, Slayton, Hyatt, Shepard. I think they have Cole Beasley, Jamison Crowder. I mean, they've got like this whole hodgepodge of wide receivers. What are the what are the high stakes players doing with this room?
So, like I said, you got Hodgins, you got Paris Campbell, you got Darius Slayton, you got Sterling Shepard, you got Wendell Robinson, you got Jalen Hyatt. I can tell you, out of that group, Hodgins and Paris Campbell are the favorites. They're the ones that are most likely to be drafted. Now, you could get any of them in the 15th round or later. So, and again, it depends on the drafter. If I'm a volume drafter, I'm probably taking a couple shares of each of those guys, right? Just to kind of like get exposure to them. But for somebody who's maybe just drafting, a fewer amount of drafts and they want to take a shot, I think Paris Campbell's probably the guy that you want there. But again, like, you don't have to get so caught up in the draft season, because these are the types of guys that are going to be on the waiver wire too, right? You're not going to draft these guys and then hold them all year. Right. Well, so what's going to happen, especially right now, those are the types of guys where you're going to draft them now. You're going to see how training camp evolves. You're going to see who kind of like separates from the pack that first week or two. And then the other guys, they're probably going to get dropped anyway. So it could be like a recycle bin type of situation where the guy in the first couple of weeks is not the guy that kind of comes on later in the season either. But right now, I'm probably taking Paris Campbell out of that, it's the island of misfits, really, is what you're dealing with.
Yes, it is. It's the perfect way to describe it. The island of misfit toys. All right. So far now, I've got Sky Moore. I've got Paris Campbell. Let's do some more. Let's do some more late darts here. This is actually kind of fun. We all know Amon-Ra St. Brown is the man, and Jameson Williams. He seems to be going somewhere around the 8th or 9th round. I'm seeing people are buying into that, but there's a lot of action. Listen, we've got 6 weeks of trying to figure out who's going to be catching the ball, and it's not going to all be Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So with the rest of this wide receiver room for Detroit, because you always want to get off to a decent start. Where are they? Where are the FFPC players looking?
Well, it's a wide receiver. There's you got Amon-Ra and you got Jameson Williams, and that's basically it. There's a few shares of Josh Reynolds being taken. Sam Laporta seems to be popular. You got a lot of that, but as far as receiving goes, Jahmyr Gibbs, the anticipation is he's going to catch a lot of balls. Mm-hmm. His ADP is actually rising, so he's actually even going in the second round at this point. At the end of the second round in a few drafts, but. Jameson Williams, man, the guy is like, people have been waiting like 2 years for something to happen. Like the dynasty bros are just like, that's their guy. But he's a guy, and he like threw a punch or something in practice yesterday. So, and then he's got the gambling thing. So it's you're gonna have to stash it. He's a roster clogger, I think, in some situations. So if you draft him, get him at a good price, and you're just going to have to stash and hold and pray, as far as a redraft goes. But I don't know. I'm probably going Laporta if I want another piece of those receiving options. Over there. So
yeah, I like the Laporta call for sure. Jameson Williams, he's going to be like? Jameson Williams is like the modern day Josh Gordon now, right? Here's a dude with like all this talent, and he's just going to keep finding ways to piss it away over and over.
Yeah, it's the guys like they're teases every year. And he might deliver, but it's tough to get too heavily invested in him. It's the same thing with Kadarius Toney. right? He
Yep.
had that one great route against Dallas. And then, like, ever since then, people have just been enamored with, like, his potential. Again, like Josh Gordon. And they're just living off of those plays. So, but we'll see.
Who's it been for you? I mean, we could go all time. We're adults here. We can talk about 20 years ago. I don't care. Who is that player who like burned you like that? For me, I mean, it was Josh Gordon. I was like literally like I was so in on Josh Gordon when he first came in, and and all the nonsense there and whatever, and then giving him another chance and everything. I'm sure you've got somebody who you're like, this dude just ruined me throughout my fantasy career for like 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, I've been playing since 1990. So it's like every there's one guy who will like stick out and screw you every couple of years. I can't think of, there's been too many to recollect names. Names probably people don't even recognize. Maybe Joey Galloway. Maybe I went 1 year too long on a Joey Galloway. Like when he signed with the Cowboys. It's like, oh, this is it. They usually get you at the tail end of their careers. You go for the names, which could be the case with like Odell Beckham this year. Like, oh, they paid him all that money, and it seems like a good situation. But again, it's been a while since he delivered for people. So
high stakes people buying in on Odell, aren't they?
Well, you still have to take shots, right? Mm-hmm. So people aren't all in, but they're smart enough to know like I need a few shares. But there's not like a wholesale like pushing them up draft boards either, and that's a dicey situation over in Baltimore. So they've got so many new faces. We'll see, and is Lamar really going to throw more than, or is he just going to defer to his instincts and keep running the ball? So it's tough, So, but that's the fun of it. Like at this point of the season, your perspective changes every couple days. Yeah. Because you some new piece of news like kind of gets you fired up, and then you build a portfolio of players, and then you go to battle. And then when you're in the season, you hope you got more calls right than you got wrong, right? Everybody's going to get stuff wrong, but you don't want to be too heavily invested in a given player that tanks and sinks you for the year and gives you a bad year overall.
Yeah. No, you're right, man. You're right. I mean, I'm like, one of my guys who's not going to, whether he tanks or not, is going to be irrelevant because of where everybody's letting me get him, and that's Cortland Sutton.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're going to let me keep getting Cortland Sutton in the 9th round, well, I'm just going to do it all day long and be happy with that. One more from me here, Darren, before I let you get on out of here. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you've got drafts tonight that you're going to have to be monitoring and everything like that, but one of the big questions that I keep getting asked, and this is a lot of people who are, they're like signed up for the main event at the FFPC. They're signed up for the Fantasy Pros contests over there as well. Not best ball, like legit ones. How's everybody handling bye weeks 13 and 14 players? Because I get people asking me all the time. They're like, should we discount them a little bit because regular season, great, fine, wonderful. But with the playoffs starting, in weeks 13 and weeks 14, losing players like key cogs to your team for the opening round of the playoffs is a huge, huge issue. Like, are we seeing people kind of fading those guys a little bit? How are we seeing people handling these late bye weeks, which I tremendously hate?
Yeah, the NFL keeps sticking it to us with those, and good teams too. So week 13, you got Minnesota, Buffalo, Baltimore, and the Giants. I mean, there's major fantasy assets on those teams. But generally what I see is like that type of hesitation, it's the newer players, right? But you got to ask yourself, if I'm playing in this tournament format, I'm shooting for $1 million. Mm-hmm. Are you focused on winning your individual league, or are you focused on taking down the whole tournament? So you should be focused, if you're playing in this, you should be focused on taking down the whole tournament. So with the FFPC format, if you finish first or second in your league, forget about the league playoffs where you go head to head. If you are have the highest winning record, or if you have the most points, you are guaranteed a berth into the championship round. So it doesn't matter like what you do in those league playoffs. You still got a ticket to the big dance anyway, right? So I don't really see ADP influenced by that. I mean, Justin Jefferson is the number 1 player selected overall, still just slightly edging out Travis Kelce. So that he's got the week 13 bye. But then you see tons of Andrews, Lamar Jackson stacks too. That's week 13 as well. So what I would say is be aware of it. Maybe it's a tiebreaker in some situations, but go with the players that you have confidence in. Go to battle with your guys. But then be aware that you've got the week 13 bye, and then maybe target somebody later in your draft to kind of fill in that gap if you make it to the league playoffs. Because it's still nice to win your league and get that, $1,500 or a free main event entry in the Fantasy Pros. That's nothing to sneeze at. So guys that you might want to look at that you can get late. Aaron Rodgers plays Atlanta. He's home against Atlanta and Houston weeks 13 and 14, right? So that's a guy maybe you can get late to kind of cover you that should have some nice games, right? So that's what you do. You don't shy away. Embrace the chaos, right? Stick with those guys, but be smarter than everybody else. Look at the schedule and see, like, what are my other options during these playoff weeks? So if I make it there, I still got a shot, and I still got – you want the best of both worlds. You want your cake and be able to eat it too.
Embrace the chaos because you want your cake and you're going to eat it too. That's at Fantasy Mojo on the old Twitter machine. FantasyMojo.com is the website. Go over to myffpc.com. Start registering. Get in there now and head over to FantasyMojo.com and go subscribe over there as well because it's going to be a huge, huge help for you. I can't thank you enough for being here. Anything else before I let you scooch on out of here? Anything else you want to shout out?
No, I'll see you in Canton probably, right? We got the expo in a couple of weeks, so
yeah,
I'll be out there.
Yep. Absolutely. Drinks on me, buddy. Here we go.
All right. Drink up.
All right. At Fantasy Mojo, everybody. Again, give them a follow on Twitter and get over to the FFPC and get that going. So, again, huge, huge thanks to Darren for joining us here. Give him a follow on Twitter. Trust me. He's going to make you happy, as will the boys over at the FFPC. Oh, I meant to ask him what Eric Balkman's beard smells like. Damn. Ernie, can we get him back? No? He's there. Oh, look at that.
Balkman, he's probably, if he's from Wisconsin, so he's probably got a lot of cheese in that beard, right? So, but I heard he's going to shave it off by the time we get around to Vegas. So it's whatever he's got, he's going to get it cleaned out. He's a good guy.
I love Balky. He's one of my favorites. The question I was going to ask you is how far away do you think you have to be before you can start smelling that beard?
I don't know.
8 feet, 10 feet?
That's a question for his wife, right? So next time you talk, don't ask him.
Oh, I love it. All right, get out of here.
All right, later.
Thank you so much. Oh, see, it's the little things in life that keep me amused, people. It's the little things in life. Come on. Fun stuff like that. If you guys haven't caught Eric Balkman on the FFPC show here on Better Sports Network, you got to tune in for that. And jump into the chat room and ask Balky what his beard smells like. I ask him every time I talk to him, but I always like to get public opinion on that as well. We got some time here left on. You know what? I'll tell you what. I want to talk about my pros versus Joe's draft because we're going to stick, and talk FFPC. Ernie, if you could pull up the draft board for me, like everybody here. So here you go. So I picked 10th. In this one here. I don't know why the algorithms all have me picking 10 through 12. Basically, it's every draft I'm doing is from the back end. So I'm feeling real good about it. So I just wanted to show everybody what it was. So yes, here you go. I took Saquon Barkley with my top pick. It was the day after he signed. Listen, the dude is just, the offense goes through him. The pass catcher, busts through the holes. He's got that speed burst that you want. He can take it to the outside and run up field. He can take it between the tackles and find the holes and follow his blockers. I'm all in on Saquon. So to have him drop to me like that, but look at this board. Look at how crazy this board was where everybody was just, glomming the wide receivers so much. And listen, this is one of the things that I talk about with people in a lot of ways, where it's the cliche when everybody zigs, you have to zag. This draft board shows you exactly what it is. Now, you do a one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, and two flexes. All right. And so, and not a super flex. So two flexes. So with the way my draft was going on here, I took Barkley and the two guys right behind me, as you can see, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and AJ Brown. The guy in front of me took two wide receivers as well. All right. So with all of these wide receivers getting yanked off the board, yes, I could have said I could take Devontae Adams or Jalen Waddle or Chris Olave or Devonta Smith. I opted for Nick Chubb, best running back out there in the NFL, folks. The best guy. And you get him in the second round. What could be better? And with Deshaun Watson now under center and having a year to kind of work through this offense and figure it all out and get NFL ready, dude, I love Nick Chubb. So I did that. Now, when it came back to me in the third round, I was like, all right, let me get myself a wide receiver here, because so many were coming off the board. And so I took DeAndre Hopkins. Listen, I know it's not a high volume passing offense, but this is the dude who's going to get the majority of the targets. I love Treylon Burks. I love Chiga Okonkwo, but that's what we're looking at here. Oh, it sounds like so when I take a look at it here, I say, all right, I'm going to grab DeAndre Hopkins. He's a number one. And then right behind me, again, these guys took Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen. Then the dude takes Deebo Samuel. So all of these wide receivers coming off the board, and it's coming back to me. Could I take Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy there? Yeah, of course I can. But there are so many teams out here that are going to be looking for running backs. I know this is not trading. I'm not talking about making trades or anything like that. I'm talking about the fact that you could start two running backs and two flexes. And who says you can't put two running backs and two in your two flexes right there? So give me a bell cow in Najee Harris, who should be doing better in Pittsburgh this year. And then here was the thing. So coming back in the fifth, and this is why I did it, because I think a lot of people are going to say stuff to me about, well, what were you doing there taking that fourth running back? Did you really need it? Look at all the wide receivers coming off the board, blah, 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 blah. Well, here was my move, because Drake London went right before me, and I like Drake London. And had Drake London been there, I probably would have done it. But then I look at the two teams behind me, and these two teams behind me who have gone now 3 and 4 wide receivers, I was like, I'm going to force their hand, because I wanted either Miles Sanders or Brandon Ayuk. And so what I did was I'm going to take the running back here, because it's going to force these two guys behind me to say, crap, no running backs left here. I'm going to have to deal with more running backs. And so it forces their hand to taking David Montgomery, Dobbins, Akers, probably a little bit before they wanted them to go. They really should have gone based on how much, running backs have been pushed down. But by me taking Miles Sanders, forced their hands to say, we can't go without taking running backs here. And, and my feeling was this is going to push Brandon Ayuk, who I think could actually be the number one in San Francisco this year. I love Deebo, don't get me wrong. But to me, Ayuk is a guy who is definitely going to blossom in this offense, especially with Brock Purdy out there, slinging the rock. So I took Miles Sanders. I forced their hands, and they did exactly that. 3 running backs and a quarterback in Justin Fields, which left me Brandon Ayuk. Now, moving forward here in the rest of my draft, Ern, if you could do me a huge favor, just scroll down a little bit so that they can see the bottom end here of my draft. Yeah. Oh, that's it. That's the money spot. Ooh. That's like, if you're like scratching my back and you hit that one area there, that's what I'm talking about. So after Ayuk, I knew that I needed to hit the wide receivers. It's something that you got to make sure that you do. But I also needed to handle quarterbacks as well, or a quarterback, or get somebody who I like. So Brandon Cooks was my next target. I double tapped the quarterback position with Tua and Daniel Jones. Felt nice and comfortable about that. I'm covered. I feel all right. If Tua gets hurt, I've got Daniel Jones, and I felt good about that. Then I came back and y'all let me take Cortland Sutton. What is that, the 10th round you let me take Cortland Sutton? People. Ex-receiver, Joe Lombardi offense. Ex-receiver, Joe Lombardi offense. Who are the past ex-receivers in a Joe Lombardi offense? Mike Williams, Michael Thomas, Marquez Colston. The scheme is not going to ignore Jerry Jeudy. It never ignored slot receivers. It didn't ignore Keenan Allen. It didn't ignore Lance Moore or whatever other slot receiver you had in New Orleans during those olden days. Okay? It just feeds targets to the ex-receiver. And that's Cortland Sutton. Now, what? They're going to trade Cortland Sutton to the Patriots? Well, then he goes in as the number one for the Patriots, and Mac Jones is going to end up targeting him over that other hodgepodge group of wideouts they have. So Cortland Sutton was my guy. Then I double tapped the tight end spot. Just wanted to kind of make sure that I was covered there. Sam Laporta, as Fantasy Mojo told everybody, seems to be a nice popular guy. Juwan Johnson, I love it. The tight end in that system down in New Orleans, we all know what's going to happen there. He's going to see those targets. We'll see what happens with Michael Thomas if the dude even plays. We'll just kind of wait and see. But then what I did was I used my late round picks on those wide receiver darts. Rashee Rice, Jalen Hyatt, couple of rookies, both in situations where there is no set wide receiver. There is no set number one. So both have the opportunity. I'll take some shots with them. Alec Pierce, going to be the number 2 behind Michael Pittman in Indianapolis. Tim Patrick, I took him. I know I'm hearing that he broke his arm, which grabbed his leg and screaming. So I don't know what's going on with Tim Patrick. But basically what I got Patrick for was if the Broncos trade Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick becomes the ex-receiver in a Joe Lombardi offense. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, maybe a little handcuff. If Tim Patrick is hurt now and he's done for the year, well, so be it. I've got Cortland Sutton. Broncos aren't going to trade Cortland Sutton then, and that's kind of where we're at. So that's just I wanted to give you guys my flow, my plan. If everybody's taking all those wide receivers around you, scoop up that top tier running back option. I'm telling you, you're not going to be upset by doing that. It's gonna work out. I promise. All right. I got to get me on out of here. I got to make some room. Britt Flynn of Brit's Blitz. That's what's coming up next. So don't change that dial. You stay tuned right here to Fantasy Alarm and the Better Sports Network. That's going to do it for me here today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Howard Bender. We'll catch you next time.